Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Paul, and you're watching Roads and Rails Hobbies. All right, folks. Today's review video I am super stoked about. Today, I'm reviewing the Mobius 0.2 airbrush from Gaahleri. Now, you may be asking, why am I so excited? It's just an airbrush. Well, it's not just any airbrush. This is from Gaahleri. Now, folks, if you have done any kind of airbrush research, whether it be on the internet or especially on Amazon, and you just typed in the word airbrush, well, Gaahleri is going to be one of the first ones to pop up. Now, there is a really good reason why that when you type in the word airbrush, either in a search engine or especially on Amazon, that the name Gaahleri keeps coming up. And that's because Gaahleri is making a high quality product without charging high quality exorbitant prices that we've all become accustomed to from some of the big name manufacturers out there. And to prove the point of what I mean about pricing, this is Gaahlerie's premium line of airbrushes. This is the Mobius 0.2 millimeter. This is actually the 0.2 GHPM Mobius. This is a very high-end airbrush at a price point to where some of the big name airbrush companies are just starting out at their lower end units. But this is a high end from Gaahleri. As you can see, I have not even opened this box yet. I'm super excited to get the cellophane off and take a look at the contents on the inside. So let's do that right now. All right, let's get the cellophane cut open and check out this airbrush. All right, cellophane is off. Before we actually open the box, let's look at the bag here and talk about some of the features of this Mobius airbrush from Gaahleri. It has a unique tangent micro air channel nozzle for superior low pressure atomization and fine lines. It has an air valve designed for versatile painting techniques, which is their MAC valve. It's a mirror level removable cup for effortless cleaning, which is super nice. Lightweight and ergonomic design, and the main lever with adjustable tension. And here we go. First thing we have here is our little card. It has information to get into touch with them, stay updated. Nice little card, tells you a little bit about their tests they go through. So they do go through a nice quality control test. Oh, hold on a second. I just noticed too on the inside the box lid has a whole parts list here. The whole airbrush is taken apart. That's pretty nice. We have our quick start guide right here. Pretty much just your standard guide. Tells you how to work, how to work the airbrush. Some spraying effects. And, oh, look at this. Oh, just kidding. Packaging. Here we go. You guys ready? Boom. Oh, some spare O-rings. And there she is. Oh boy, is that a pretty airbrush. Oh man. You know, they say it is lightweight, but it still has a nice feeling to it. Oh boy. Okay, guys, excuse my oh boys and excitedness. This feels just so nice in the hand. And I absolutely love this square trigger. I've never used an airbrush with a square trigger before. Mine have always been round, but that feels so nice. Here's your MAC valve. It comes with a quick release, the male end. That's nice. I know it does not come with the female end, but if you have an airbrush hose with quick releases on it, you already have that part, so you don't need it. But it's nice that it comes with that. I love this cutout on both sides. It's a nice, nice place to put your thumb. Boy, your thumb registers there every time. Oh, that is so nice. This thing is just butter smooth. My word. And if it's not butter smooth enough, it comes with some airbrush lube. Okay, here is our paint cup. I can get that out. There we go. And yes, this is a small paint cup. But remember, this is a 0.2 millimeter needle and nozzle setup. So you don't need a whole lot of paint with the 0.2. All that screws on nicely. And for me, this is one of my quality checks. Most airbrushes that I get, that I reviewed on my channel, that are, I don't want to say low end, but you know, more budget friendly, the paint cap and cup, in order to get them to fit perfectly, they're not so much worried about tolerances. So what they usually do is they put a rubber ring around the cap to fit it in the paint cup. Your high-end airbrushes, like companies like Iwata, stuff like that, they don't. They actually precision make their caps to fit, and this one here is precision as well. There are no rubber O-rings around it, and it fits perfectly. That to me is a sign of quality right there. The fact that they took the time to precision machine the cap for your paint cup means an awful lot. And now let's do, well, my squeak test, right? Oh boy, guys. Listen, I have some really expensive airbrushes. I'm going to tell you right now, that was the smoothest feeling airbrush handle I have ever taken off, oh my, and put on. That is just absolutely amazing. And I do love the shape of this cutout here. That's very original. All right, let's tear it down a little bit and look at the internals. That's what we're here for. That's what you guys really like to see, right? So we know the paint cap is nicely machined. Here is the paint cup. And holy smokes, they are lying. You want to talk about a mirror finish. Wow. Again, I have high-end airbrushes, and even those are not as smooth and as polished as that. That is astounding. Let's take the handle off here. Oh boy, again, that just feels amazing. And yes, this is a preset handle. Oh, and even that's smooth. Holy smokes, guys. That's insane. Okay, the needle chuck lock or locking nut. And there is your 0.2 millimeter needle. That is a very small needle. Now this should all come out. Or should it? Again, I might have to get the directions out. I've never had an airbrush that had a tension control on it for the trigger. So I'm going to look that one up. I'm sorry, I don't know everything. You know, you can ask my wife, she'll tell you that right up front. Okay, the nice thing about these types of airbrushes too, you don't need any tools to take off your tip set. And this is your needle protector right here. And here is where your air chamber valve goes. And this is their new Vortex tip set right here. Let's see if you can see this. Focus, dang you. Let me see if I go in, if it'll focus a little bit more. There we go. As you can see right here, you see the lines, how they go. Man, I have a really ugly fingernail. Excuse me. Let's try the pinky. That's not bad. Okay. If you can see right there, this is where your air comes across this chamber right here. And as you can see, it goes down, squiggles over, and goes out. And that is what is going to really help atomize your paint that comes out of this airbrush. This is a new technology. Believe it or not, airbrush technology for a gazillion years hasn't changed until this. Again, this is what I know. I don't know everything, but this is what I know about this. Most of your airbrushes, all of my high-end, so to speak, airbrushes are the old-fashioned. The air chamber just comes straight out. And they do work well, but this is supposed to atomize the paint so much better with this shape. And we will be finding that out, whether that works or not the way they say. I have a feeling it will. Now this is as broken down as I'm going to get this airbrush. In order to get this little needle chucking guide out, I would have to actually get a wrench to take this part off. And I don't feel that's necessary. We can see just from here that this is nice and polished. It's got a good spring. This is polished inside too. Here's something else that's very interesting. Other than the fact that the nozzle is a new technology with this type of vortex type of, you know, whoop, right there. This trigger itself, unlike most triggers I have ever come across, does not have a little dingly at the bottom that you have to try to line up on top of the, well, boy, this flips it away. Right down there in the bottom, you see right there is a little itty bitty button. That's what you push down and lets the air flow through. And most airbrushes, if you've seen me take these apart before, it's two pieces on the trigger usually, and the other part usually is actually the swings, and you got to try to line it up. That's a pain in the arse sometimes. This looks so much simpler. Just one piece. I really like that. So anyways, again, a lot of high quality looking parts here. I'm really impressed with the internals of this airbrush. So let's get her put back together and take a closer look at the airbrush again because it's such a pretty airbrush. One more thing I want to point out as far as how I can tell something's made with quality or not, especially when it comes to the machining tolerances. Many of the other airbrushes that I have reviewed, the much more budget-friendly entry-level portable style airbrushes, many of them that have these cutouts on the handles, when you put them together, the opening for the cutouts never ever line up exactly the same way. At one point in time, your opening may be pointing down a little bit, maybe pointing this way a little bit, maybe pointing up a little bit. Even when you tighten them down, they don't line up exactly the same. Now, my high-end airbrushes, they line up, bam, the same way every time I take the handle off. And this one is no exception to that. Even though this is not a, let's say, a big brand name airbrush, let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, we have just screwed this handle on. It is on very firm. And as you can see, this is how I'm doing it. There's a little dot right here. As you can see, it kind of corresponds with the crest, the opening of this right now. So let's flip this handle off real quick. Just drop it, move it around. Let's stick her back on. Tighten her down all the way, again, nice and tight. And as you can see, that dot lines up exactly the same place. That means that they have really strict tolerances when machining this airbrush, which again is a mark of a high quality tool. Okay, real quick guys, I was looking at the instructions to figure out how to use the, well, the knob is actually right there to figure out how much tension I want on my trigger because, well, I'm a big dummy. And I thought this was a massive instruction booklet. It really isn't. It is 8 steps, but in multiple languages. So it's a nice, simple user manual. It just kind of shows you how to use your airbrush, which if you've used an airbrush at all, you really don't need this manual, but it's nice to have, of course. And back to the tensioner for your trigger. And yes, it is this knob right here. I was trying to twist this knob because, well, I'm, again, kind of dumb sometimes. But yes, when this knob is torqued all the way down to the handle, you get your most tension, which I actually like a lot of tension on my trigger because I have big, fat, and meaty hands. But if you were to back this off, you get less and less tension on your trigger until it becomes really super soft. And it's way too soft for my liking. I like my tension very, very stiff. And yes, I am a lefty. Boy, this thing is just beautiful, even with all my fingerprints all over it. It says right here, Gaahleri Premium Mobius 0.2. Oh, you know what? They actually sent me something else that I wasn't even expecting. And I might as well use it right now to really take a good look at this airbrush. Gaahleri sent me one of their airbrush stands. And let me tell you right now, folks, this is not a cheap piece of kit either. Now, before we go downstairs to the workshop and run this airbrush through its paces, let's talk about it just for a second in the aspect of why a 0.2 millimeter. 0.2 millimeter is really getting on that edge of a micron, a super fine detail airbrush. It's not quite there yet, but it is actually getting there. The nice thing about having a 0.2 as opposed to having what is commonly standard as a 0.3 or 0.35 or even a 0.4 millimeter airbrush is that this 0.2 will still do 90% of the jobs that a 0.3 will do as far as, you know, having a nice wide pattern to get some decent coverage. But this will get down to a super duper fine line that a 0.3 really can't get to and do it neatly. A 0.3 may get down to a super fine line, but you may have a lot of little speckling along that line, which you should not get with a 0.2 millimeter nozzle needle like this one here. And the fact that you have this mag valve too, which also helps you control your airflow and your paint flow, your airflow, which controls your paint flow. So you can run at a really low pressure, which means, of course, you're going to have to thin your paints down enough to run at a low pressure to get that super fine, clean line. But when you want to paint your model, like say 1/24 scale plastic model car, or like me, I do rolling stock for model railroading, which is HO scale, N scale. I do Hot Wheels. You crank this thing wide open. You mix your paint. You're still going to have to make them kind of thin because, again, this is a 0.2, but you're going to get good coverage pretty much just like you would get from a 0.3 or 0.35 airbrush. But this gives you the added benefit of being able to get super fine detail close-up lines, which is going to be super helpful, especially when doing some weathering on rolling stock, something like that. Anything where you need fine lines. Now, I'm just a modeler, so this is even better if you're a fine artist and you're going to start doing, eyeballs and eyelashes, stuff like that, which is way beyond me. But if that's something you're into, then this is the type of airbrush that you're going to need, because not only are you going to be able to do the larger areas, you're going to do the smaller areas as well with one tool, and not have to spend hundreds upon hundreds of dollars to have a 0.18 micron or a 0.4, 0.5 micron airbrush. This 0.2 will cover 99% of your bases, which this just fills in that sweet spot of airbrushing. All right, so now that I have oogled and ogled and torn this thing apart and looked at it, let's take it down to the workshop and let's see how this thing actually works. Well, we're down in the workshop. We have the Mobius Gaahleri Mobius 2, excuse me, loaded up with some black paint. The paint that I am using is Creatix brand Wicked Black, and I reduced that with the Creatix brand Wicked Reducer. This is their 4011 reducer. And just so you know, this is my first time using this airbrush, so I'm kind of playing around with the ratios here. I have 5 drops of the black paint to 8 drops of the reducer to see if I can get a good flow with this small of a needle and tip set. Now, when I'm painting, I always like to take the needle protector off for a couple of reasons. One, if you've never used an airbrush before, a lot of times paint will gather up inside of this barrel of this needle protector, and when you are painting, invariably it will come loose and splat, ruin your project. Also, I keep an eye on my needle tip and pull off any dry paint if I see any, and I'm also able to get a little bit closer into the project. So I don't have a whole lot of paint in here, so let's start real quick by opening this MAC valve up pretty far. That's pretty good. My air compressor is set at 30 psi, and we're going to see how wide of a pattern we can get real quick. You ready? Here we go. That is pretty decent and very smooth. Okay, let's reduce this MAC valve just a little bit here, and let's zoom in and try some lines. Excuse me for moving the camera. That is somewhat annoying, I know, guys. Okay. Just like I said, my first time using this, so I'm just trying to get used to it. Oh boy, that is like hair thin. Try some dots over here. Just gotta learn to control it a little bit better. It's not the airbrush, it's me. Like I said, it's the first time I'm using it. That is, wow. I know it's zoomed in, so let me put my little pinky finger up there. That is, I mean, come on. My big finger, little finger. That is like super smooth and tight, and it's not all fuzzed out either. And the wider part, when I was putting a lot of air out, it was, but right through here, it's not. This is pretty slick. Let's continue on just a little bit here. Oh, this would be great for shading. Like I said, just those fine lines I'm able to get. And then when you open a Mac valve all the way up, and just the coverage, wow. I don't know if you can tell, but that is such an even, smooth coverage. Okay, we're going to do just one swipe of a line right here. Mac valve all the way open. Trigger all the way back. Okay. Now I did it for a reason. I want to show you something and why I think this would be useful for all kinds of hobbyists. I backed the camera up a little bit, moved it over a little bit because you can see this line. This was one pass wide open with the Mac valve wide open and the trigger wide open, pushing out paint. Now we're going to compare it to the size of, well, a Hot Wheel. I don't know how well you can see, but that one pass would pretty much cover the entire side of a 1/64 scale die-cast car. So it will definitely be used to paint Hot Wheels and probably do it really well because it really lays down some smooth paint. And we have here, well, I'm working on a General Lee. Whoop. This is a 1/25th scale car, and it's kind of hard to see at these angles, but that width of that line is as wide as this door panel. And of course, when we paint, we overlap our paint jobs. So again, that will work just fine, even for your 1/25th or 1/24 scale models. And to boot, you get these super duper fine lines. Oh, it's so awesome. We have seen this Gaahleri Mobius 0.2 torn apart, looked at the internals, and saw just how well made this airbrush is, and we saw it in action. Now granted, my first time using this airbrush, if you've ever airbrushed before, if you've used multiple airbrushes, you know each one has their own personality, so to speak, and it takes a little bit of getting used to its nuances. Nothing different about that with this either, so the more I use it, the better I'm going to get at it. But it worked amazingly. Super fine lines, nice wide coverage. What do I think about this Gaahleri Mobius 0.2 micron airbrush? Listen, I know I say I like a lot of airbrushes on my channel, and I do. Most of the ones I have reviewed have been really good airbrushes for their price point. This is no different, except for the fact that this thing actually blows me away for its price point. This on Amazon right now is under $100. I forget the exact price, and I'm not going to tell you because prices can change, right? But I know it's under $100. And I will put this up against my Iwata HPCS any day of the week. I actually like this trigger better than my Iwatas. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know I love my Iwata HPCS. That's one of my favorite airbrushes of all time. It's my first high-end airbrush. I absolutely love that thing. I love the trigger on this one so much better. It feels so much more comfortable on the finger than that round circle that most airbrushes come with. It's just awesome. I mean, totally awesome. Like I said, the trigger pull is super smooth. Not to mention this airbrush is just stunning. I mean, heck, it's almost worth the price just to buy it, get a little stand with it, and sit on a shelf and just look at it. I mean, this thing is a work of art in its own. But it works, and it works well. This actually has blown me away as to how well this airbrush works for what would still be considered an entry-level airbrush for the higher-end airbrush user. When I say entry-level airbrush, I'm not talking about the quality of the airbrush. I'm talking about the price point. To me, anything under $100 for an airbrush, I would consider to be entry-level. And I'm going to tell you right now, if one of the big boys made this airbrush, I guarantee you it'll be closer to $300 for something like this if it's made by one of the big brand name airbrush companies. This thing is, I can't talk about how amazing this thing is enough. It just actually has blown me away. Yeah, Gaahleri sent this to me to review. And I'm so happy because I've been wanting this airbrush ever since I saw it come out. I think it was like a year ago. I've been wanting to get my hands on one of these. And my review is still unbiased. I mean, I don't know what to say. I just absolutely love this thing. It actually works so well. So for the first time really ever on my channel, I'm going to say buy it. Now, I've always said, these are good ones and maybe you should get it, maybe you shouldn't. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you've got the money and you are just starting out on airbrushing and you want to get a one and done type of airbrush that will work almost, for 99% of your projects, this is the one to get. If you are already in airbrushing and let's say you have one of the really super cheap, entry-level airbrushes and you want to step up your game and you've been looking at the big brand name airbrushes, which a lot of us do. I mean, I bought a couple of them myself because these companies weren't around back then. I would buy this instead. This thing works just that well. And if you are a seasoned airbrush artist and you want to get into a much more of a smaller micron airbrush and you don't have one yet and you don't want to, shell out the money for like a Harder and Steinbeck, I think this is your go-to also. With that being said, here comes the sales pitch. If you want one, there'll be a link in the description below to Amazon. It's I am an Amazon associate member, so yes, if you buy one, Amazon kicks back a little bit of money to me. Doesn't cost you anything extra, and that's what helps, keep the lights on in this little endeavor I call YouTube. And I do appreciate all of that help I get from you guys buying stuff that I suggest. And this is definitely one of the top suggestions that I can make for a purchase. I have 99.9% confidence in the quality and the use and of this airbrush. I think it is that great of an airbrush. And I do know that, like there's contact information in the box to get a hold of Gaahleri if there's problems. Most of the non-name brand or, I hate to say it, but most of the ones that come out of China that I've reviewed have had the, little self-contained airbrush and stuff like that. There's no contact information, not easily found contact information, I should say, in with the box and the airbrush. I mean, they all have contact information. I have not found one yet that hasn't. But this one here, you open a box, there's a card right there. Hey, check us out. Find us on the web. If you got a problem, call us, type of deal. That speaks volumes alone about the fact that they stand behind their product. Well, now that I've done my sales pitch, it's time to say goodbye. Don't leave just yet. Let's take one more close look at this Gaahleri Mobius 0.2 micron airbrush. As I said, this thing is just absolutely stunning. And again, here's the box. Cover my face up because nobody wants to see that, right? Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something about this particular airbrush, the Gaahleri Mobius 0.2. This thing is, as I mentioned too many times already, an amazing airbrush. Again, here's the box it comes in. Check it out, guys. I mean, that's all you can do is go check it out. This thing is really worth the price. With that being said, as always, thank you for spending your time with me. God bless and take care, everyone.